All right, today on Musicians Edition, we're answering a question from a viewer who asked about how to hold the sticks when playing a drag. If you should use your wrist to control that motion, or if you should use your fingers to control that motion. All right, so we're gonna answer this in a couple different ways, but the short answer is you're gonna use both. Both your wrist and your fingers are gonna control that motion and control the bounce of those grace notes. And what you want to do is not change your grip at all for this, right? We want to have all of our different stroke types available to us in our normal grip, so that we don't have to be changing things, midstream while we're trying to play different types of notes, right? So don't change anything with your grip, right? It should always stay the same. Right? What is going to change is that you're still going to use your wrist, right? Just like when we play a flam, right? To get the motion, right? To move the stick downward toward the head. But then after you make contact with the head, it's your fingers that are gonna cause the stick to bounce, however many times, right? Either a multiple bounce, or if you want like a buzz sort of sound on your drag, or if you want to get two bounces and play it as a double stroke, right? That's going to be just different degrees of pressure on the stick from your middle ring and pinky fingers, okay? So I really like to start this by playing flams and getting the motion down, right? Before we add the fingers, right? So this would just be the wrist part of the motion, okay? So we're going to start with one hand up, one hand down, right? We're going to move both hands at the same time, and that gives us our flam sound, right? One little note followed by one big note, right? But it's all happening in one motion. I'm moving both my hands at the same time, okay? We can practice it in both hands just to get that motion down, and it's just a little bitty, tiny little movement in your wrist to get the grace note, okay? Now, once the flam motion is comfortable, what you want to do is don't change anything. You're moving the exact same way. It's just with this little note, instead of playing a single note, we're just going to apply a little bit of pressure, and we're going to start by playing a buzz stroke with that hand. Okay, so we're just going for this sound. Okay, so I'm pushing down with my wrist, and then I'm controlling the buzz with different degrees of pressure in my back fingers. Okay? One way to practice this is to play a couple of buzzes by themselves, and then play both hands together. You might find that you're really, really tempted. What I see with a lot of students is they're really tempted to move the grace note first, right? And with a flam, it's a little bit less tempting because we're kind of just moving both hands at the exact same time. But then when we add the buzz component, then we start wanting to move that hand first and play it like this. Right? And that's not the approach we want to take. We want to take the same motion as the flam and just add a buzz. Right? And because that little note, again, is closer to the surface, it's going to happen right before the primary note, or right before the big note. All right, so another way you can practice this is by playing a couple of flams in a row, right? And then playing a couple of buzzes on the grace note, right? And you should have the same timing in your hands between a flam and a drag. So I'm feeling my hands are moving at the exact same time, whether it's a flam or a drag. Okay, so that'll get you playing drags with buzzes, right? And that's a really good way to get by until you kind of develop the double stroke. Okay, so what I tell students a lot of times when they first encounter drags, play them as buzzes. That'll be fine. That'll get the job done for the time being. And then while you're using that to kind of survive, we'll work on your double stroke so that you can eventually add those in. Okay. So a good way to get started with a double stroke is to play what we call dead strokes, right? So you're going to play a buzz stroke, but it's going to be a really compressed buzz stroke, right? So you're going to have kind of the highest degree of pressure in your back fingers, and we're going to get it to where the stick doesn't buzz at all. Well, maybe there's a little bit of buzz in there, but almost none, right? I'm just going to push the stick all the way into the surface and try not to let it bounce at all. Okay? And that's going to give you the most pressure feeling in your back fingers to completely stop all the buzzes. Okay? And then from there, we're going to slowly loosen up that pressure. So I've got the most pressure here. I'm just going to loosen up just a little bit. And you'll notice the buzzes get a little bit longer. I'm going to continue to loosen up. They're going to get longer and longer and longer. And then they're going to get open enough that I can start to kind of sort of count how many I'm getting. So right now I'm at about 3 or 4. I'm going to keep opening up, keep lightening up that pressure, and eventually it's going to turn into 2. Right? And once I get it to 2, I'm going to try to remember what that feels like in my back fingers, in my fulcrum, right? And see if I can repeat that same feeling each time to where I can kind of reliably get 2, right? This takes a while to kind of develop that feeling, right? So take your time. This is play this exercise a couple times a day. Start all the way closed, and then slowly work your way out more and more open until you're just getting 2, right? And on the first day, you're probably not going to get to the point where you only get 2, right? It's going to take some time to kind of develop that control, to be able to really manipulate that bounce to where you can reliably get 2, right? So take your time, give it several days before you start to get frustrated about it. Right? But eventually you'll get to the point where you can predict how much pressure it's going to take from your back fingers to reliably get 2 bounces. Okay? And also, like we talked about earlier, it's still using the wrist to initiate that movement. Okay? Once that's happening, then we just take that double stroke that we worked on and apply it in the same way that we did the buzz stroke a few minutes ago, right? So we can take a flam, right? Both hands move at the same time. One big note, one little note, right? And then just put that double stroke on the little note of the flam. So the flam becomes, right? And we can go in and out of it. Flam, drag. Flam, and drag. Okay? Then you can kind of combine that with the dead stroke exercise we did, right? So we can take this dead stroke exercise, put the big note from the flam with it, right? And then you can keep those going, loosen up the pressure in your back fingers, all the way until you're getting 2 notes. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Again, it's about 1, getting your flams timed up right, 2, adding a buzz to that flam, right, and that'll get you kind of your drag that you can use in the meantime while you're developing your double stroke, right, and then develop your double stroke by playing your dead strokes, slowly opening up and kind of figuring out how to control that bounce to get 2 notes, okay, and then just put it all together, and then you got your drag, right. That's not to say that playing drags with a buzz stroke isn't appropriate, because there's plenty of contexts where that works really, really well. And then there's other contexts where a double stroke is preferable, right? And that's just something that your ears have to tell you. The style of the music will tell you which one to use. But it's really nice to have both of those things in your repertoire. So these are a few ways that you can work on that. And thank you so much to that viewer that asked this question. Is a really good question, and it's a thing that a lot of snare drummers get hung up on because it's difficult, right? So take your time developing that control. It's a long process, but over time it'll steadily get better. Just keep practicing it every day. All right, that's it for today. Happy practicing. See you next time.